In this module, what I want to do is take a brief look at the biopsychosocial model, which I dub Engel's rescue mission for psychiatry and medicine. You can't move in medicine, particularly medical education these days, without hearing this term, the biopsychosocial. It's something that has become ingrained in education, an ideal as well that all medical practitioners and psychiatrists should strive for. The model itself was proposed by Engel in 1977. It was something that he'd been deeply interested in for considerably longer than this. He had gone to Rochester in upstate New York to take up a position there and had become deeply embedded within the department there and had become very friendly with psychiatrists. Engel himself wasn't a psychiatrist, he was a generalist, but he had an interest in psychiatry and an interest in psychoanalysis as well. Engel, for much of his adult life, had been a crusader for a model of medicine that didn't just rely upon reductionism, biological reductionism. Rather, he wanted to take a whole person approach that looked at the biological, but also the psychological and the social context in which people were suffering. Now, his most celebrated paper, The Need for a New Medical Model, a Challenge for Biomedicine, published in Science in 1977. You'll notice same place that Rosenhan published on being sane in insane places. His most celebrated paper laid down a challenge, but also tried to make some interesting connections between biomedicine and psychiatry. Engel recounted this story. At a recent conference on psychiatric education, many psychiatrists seem to be saying to medicine, please take us back and we will never deviate from the medical model. That deviation, by the way, had almost certainly been psychoanalysis, the Freudian model. For as one critical psychiatrist put it, psychiatry has become a hodgepodge of unscientific opinions, assorted philosophies and schools of thought, mixed metaphors, role diffusion, propaganda, and politicking for mental health and other esoteric goals. In contrast, the rest of medicine appears neat and tidy. It has a firm biological base in the biological sciences, enormous technologic resources at its command, and a record of astonishing achievement in elucidating mechanisms of disease and devising new treatments. It would seem that psychiatry would do well to emulate its sister medical disciplines by finally embracing once and for all the medical model of disease. But I do not accept such a premise. Rather, I contend that all medicine is in crisis, and further, that medicine's crisis derives from the same basic fault as psychiatry's, namely adherence to a model of disease no longer adequate for the scientific tasks and social responsibilities of either medicine or psychiatry. Engel was meeting full on the challenge that had been laid down by Ivan Illich in Medical Nemesis, which had accused biomedicine of in effect causing people to be ill, having an iatrogenic effect. In fact, if we follow that kind of Monty Python Life of Brian thing of what have the Romans ever done for us, Illich would say, what has medicine ever done for us? And people would say, well, people are healthy because of public health, antibiotics and stuff like that. And Illich would come back and say, no, it was rising standards of nutrition. On top of which there was this deep concern that medicine had become all too attached to biological reductionism in such a way that the whole person, the whole patient, had disappeared. And to Engel it seemed wrong that psychiatry was falling into that trap, that the pendulum was swinging back to biological psychiatry and not paying enough attention to the psychosocial dimensions of mental illness. The model itself was premised by this idea that psychiatry and biomedicine shared a similar problem, biological reductionism. And the solution was to give equal weight to the biological and psychosocial factors when treating an individual. And it became a major rhetorical plank of biomedical education, still taught today in the medical schools as the best way to engage with patients and their suffering. And on top of which, it became enshrined in the consult liaison model in hospitals. So if someone is having an acute psychotic episode, they get admitted to hospital. There'll be a psychiatrist there, the CL psychiatrist, whose job is then to pull in all the different services, the social workers, the generalists, and the right kind of nursing staff and the right kind of psychiatric help, pull it all together within the biopsychosocial context. I think, however, that notwithstanding what Engel said, there was some significant differences between psychiatry and biomedicine. The rocky relationship wasn't a rocky relationship for nothing, because psychiatry had indeed always been seen as the Cinderella of the biomedical sciences. You shall go to the ball, but there is no fairy godmother waving a wand to get a coach and a gown so that psychiatry can go to the ball. And there was indeed a very good reason for this. Biomedicine has always experienced problems in the way that it has reduced illness to a biological process. There's no doubt about that. But I would say that one of its main problems was what I call and other people call the therapeutic gap. From the early 19th century, and we'll see this in later lectures, biomedicine was incredibly good at understanding and delineating the causes of disease, prognosis, pathology. But you can know how disease operates and what it does. But developing an effective cure or an effective treatment on the back of that takes an incredibly long time. And we can think of the gaps that have emerged recently with our better understanding of epigenetics. It still leaves us high and dry in terms of how to actually intervene at the level of the genome. But nevertheless, on the whole, it has been extremely effective at, over time, developing particular therapies. Not so psychiatry. It's almost got a double problem of the therapeutic gap. It's the same problem as biomedicine, only worse, because we don't understand the causes of many mental illnesses. This is still the case today. We don't understand what causes bipolar or the various forms of schizophrenia. We think that there's probably genetic markers that allow us to identify people that might have a predisposition to these conditions. But unlike, say, cancer, we can't look in the body or the brain and actually see the things going wrong. So, in point of fact, psychiatry still remains very bad at etiology, causation, which is why I've said that I would expect that pendulum to swing backwards and forwards still between biological causes and psychosocial causes. And to me, all of these factors highlight again the tensions that exist between psychiatry and the rest of biomedicine.